When I saw these images from the super volcano Campi Flegrei in Naples, I was like, whoa, is Shizzy going to hit the fizzy there? And then we have like a conspiracy theory. Did the INGV hide the values of volcanic gases because they were supposedly to be much higher than we thought? And they have given a statement today because people were getting really angry about the measurements in the tunnel, in the train tunnel that was closed. So a lot is going on. Is this volcano flying? There's a German saying, around your ears, around the ears of Naples, a population with more than 6 million people. What is going on? The images are definitely shocking, guys. So let's dissect this. A massive black column suddenly rose beside the Solfatara today. The Solfatara is this area where we think the eruption will happen, most likely that white sand dune thing, like a golf course thing. I never know the name of that, but that's the area of high concern. That's the area where we have the steam fumaroles coming out, where we have the temperature increase, the gas increase, where we have steam coming out of the road via Antiana, and especially we have to look at these car dealerships that were covered in smoke before from the volcano, melting also the asphalt. So from the streets of Pozzuoli, it looked like smoke was pouring directly from the Campi Flegrei volcanic zones. Flames were racing across the eastern side of the Solfatara hill between Pozzuoli and Agnano towards Via Antignana and Via Scafoglio. And I'll show you the area here quickly on Google Earth. If you go there, you see Solfatara, and you see the road, you see the car dealerships, and you see Campi Flegrei, right? This area. The images that you see there, you're like, whoa, black smoke especially, right? That's volcanic material, magma, volcanic rocks. You're thinking, Jesus, that could be Shizzy hitting the fizzy. So, guys, take a deep breath. It was not a volcanic eruption. It was indeed a fire. Bad location. But what caused the fire? Was it the heat from the volcano? That is the big question. Authorities identified it as a fast-moving vegetation fire, but the location could hardly be more disturbing. The flames entered an area where volcanic gases escape through the ground. Gas, fire, where thermal cameras are watching for changes and where scientists have already recorded increasing heat beneath the surface. And then the fire reached these rows of vehicles. Around 200 cars were reportedly damaged. That's a lot, with approximately at least 20 completely destroyed. So there are the Volkswagen and Volvo Penta dealerships. They were amongst the hardest hit. And the headquarters of the television station Canale 21, and we're seeing a video of them as well, had to be evacuated as flames moved dangerously close. And what you see anyways, if you look at these videos, how close they live, we have to say, on the volcano, on the Solfatara. That's why this is so dangerous. If this thing blows, the direct red zone, at least 500,000 people, Pozzuoli, but Western Naples more than 6 million people. That's why this is so critical. Firefighters, they started to attacking the blaze from the ground while helicopters and Canadair aircraft repeatedly dropped water over this burning hillside. So the cause of the fire, which we're also interested in, is still under investigation. Currently, there's no evidence that volcanic heat or gas started it. But yeah, the location is quite suspicious, right? It burned through one of the most closely monitored sections of that Campi Flegrei caldera. The same corridor now at the center of a rapidly growing gas controversy. I mentioned it at the beginning. Via Antignana basically goes through the volcano, or let's say lies along the southeastern outer flank of the Solfatara crater, south of the really powerful Peschiarelli fumarolic area. So the Italian Volcano Observatory operates a thermal camera that is called ANTN in this same exact zone. And the job of that camera is to watch the ground between Solfatara and Peschiarelli for abnormal heat. And they're finding it, right? The June surveillance report recorded a slight rise in maximum ground temperatures during the second half of the month in the Agnagno via Antignana area, hint, hint. So again, this does not mean the fire was volcanic. It means the flames burned across terrain already being watched, because we do have hot fluids, bubbling stuff, and gases. They're moving beneath it. And while hundreds of cars were burning above ground, an extraordinary amount of invisible volcanic gas was continuing to enter a certain railway tunnel nearby. I mean, building a railway tunnel at Campi Flegrei alone is maybe not the greatest idea, right? We've had cracks in it from the earthquakes, but again, it's there. The line 2 railway between the Pozzuoli, Solfatara, and Napoli, Campi Flegrei. It's a nice name for these train stations. Well chosen, right? It has been closed since June 13th after carbon dioxide has accumulated inside. And the tunnel, yeah, name is good too. The Flegrea tunnel. Phlegrean fields. Campi Flegrei means burning fields, translated. Just to mention, right? So Flegrea tunnel, yeah, great name. Of course, at first when they detected that, and by the way, they detected volcanic gases in basements, in school buildings, in many other structures too. So the volcano is seeping through, and I'll show you the images here from a structure near the Solfatara where it's coming through the walls. You see the sulfurous material there. It's coming through. So at first the population was told, yeah, the concentrations were high or abnormal. But that was all that they said, right? The trains stopped. The emergency buses began carrying passengers, like basically through the roads, right? Engineers were entering the tunnel. Weeks passed without the line reopening. So, and then this is what gets locals quite upset. The official measurements appeared. So on June 30th, scientists installed a monitoring station approximately 50 meters, that's roughly 164 feet, from the Bagnoli side entrance to that tunnel. And so they had 3 sensors that were measuring the carbon dioxide at different heights, at a height of like 50 centimeters, 1.2 meters, and like 2 meters above the floor, 2 meters, roughly 6.5 feet. So 1.2 meters, 4 feet, something like that. So between June 30th and July 5th, the instrument did indeed record carbon dioxide concentrations reaching approximately 7% by volume. So that doesn't sound like, whoa, but listen, that is 70,000 parts per million. Normal outdoor air contains roughly 420 to 430 parts per million. We're talking about 70,000 parts per million. So to give you a perspective, the American threshold, NIOSH threshold, considered immediately dangerous to life if it's reaching that or health, is 40,000 parts per million. So now there we have 70,000 parts per million. The maximum measured inside this tunnel was even higher, approximately 75% higher than the emergency threshold. So at 70,000 parts per million, exposure only several minutes can cause severe intoxication and potentially unconsciousness. And if you're there unconscious, over and out, right? So that what they measured there and what they found there was no minor trace of something drifting into the tunnel. So the preliminary estimate calculated that approximately 95 tons of carbon dioxide per day were entering the tunnel, with a large uncertainty of plus or minus 40 tons. That's a lot. That's almost half of it. So that's, if we put that in perspective, that equals roughly 0.56 cubic meters of pure carbon dioxide every second, guys. So The report went even further. Scientists stated, because of the present dynamics beneath Campi Flegrei, well, dynamics, an active volcano that is escalating, present dynamics. Nice wording, guys. They further said, because of these present dynamics underneath Campi Flegrei, future changes, including further increases in the tunnel's gas flow, cannot be excluded. And guys, there's a study that I reported about that said, we just need a tiny little change in pressure and this thing, poof. So carbon dioxide, by the way, is colorless and odorless. That's a danger with this thing. It's also heavier than air. So inside a long, poorly ventilated tunnel, which we have here, it can sink towards the floor and accumulate in depressions. So early investigations found the highest concentrations near the tunnel bottom and during the night when the natural air movement was weaker. So if a person were to enter such an area, it would receive no warning from smell or appearance. Dizziness, confusion, loss of coordination could begin before the victim understood what was happening. And already months ago, residents reported that in their homes, in their basements, in school areas. So, and I mean, that official number, 7%, has ignited the current controversy. So you have to imagine that the residents, I mean, what they are enduring all the time, but when it comes to the gas, they already had endured a month-long railway shutdown, plus all the recent earthquakes, right? Volcanic earthquakes, by the way. So the exact scale of the danger only became widely visible after the detailed monitoring report was released. So the issue is no longer whether abnormal gas was present. We know that now with the instruments that give us proof. Now everyone is like asking the question across Pozzuoli is why the public initially received vague descriptions when the final numbers showed concentrations so high that they're capable of creating a life-threatening atmosphere. So why did they not go, that's my question, and check other structures again, right? There is no confirmed evidence that the INGV falsified measurements or deliberately concealed an eruption warning or something like this. But the enormous gap between the phrase elevated CO2 and the number 70,000 parts per million has created, let's say it lightly, a serious transparency problem, to say it nicely. So now the INGV has issued a direct response to these allegations and to the fear and the rumors. So the INGV says its job is to monitor the geophysical and geochemical activity of Campi Flegrei and provide scientific assessments. Blah, 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 yada, yada, yada. We all know that. Then they say it does not control railway operations, decide when trains stop, determine construction schedules, or authorize the reopening of the tunnel. Well, that is surprising. If the railway operations are so near the volcano that they're observing, does that mean they're also not responsible for almost 6 million people that live so close by this volcano? I mean, if we have volcanic gases in a tunnel, I think they should be responsible because that's the volcano doing this, right? Or am I wrong with this? Let me know in the comments. So this is just blah, blah, in my opinion. So the INGV also rejects claims that the planned duration of the closure can be used to judge whether the gas anomaly is serious. Well, if it wasn't serious, you could reopen the tunnel, right? I mean, are we that, I don't want to say the word dumb? I don't think we are. So a 30-day engineering schedule, of course, yeah, it's not volcanic evidence, but the concentrations, yes, they're determined by the instruments regardless of how long railway repairs take. So they kind of say it's a railway repair. A repair. What did they repair? Would be interesting. So in other words, the Institute is separating the science from the infrastructure decisions. So okay, so if Campi Flegrei erupts, the infrastructure decisions to evacuate all is also not their job. They're just there to monitor it, right? So if that's the case, when they say currently there's no eruption warning, there's currently no indication, define currently, please, because then we're more careful with what you're telling us. Currently, is that in this hour, this day, in the next 10 years? So they're separating the science from the infrastructure decisions, but they're not withdrawing the gas measurements. This abnormal carbon dioxide is more than real. So the regional authorities say engineers are studying powerful extraction turbines that could continuously pull contaminated air from the tunnel. Okay, great. A reopening target of approximately 30 days was discussed following the July 1st technical meeting, but the turbines must first be designed, positioned, and tested against the continuing inflow of volcanic gas. Turbines, yeah, that is really, really nice. But what about the gas? Why is this increasing so drastically? Turbines don't help when a volcano does something. Hint, hint. So authorities also are telling us they're considering expanding carbon dioxide detectors beyond public buildings and into private properties in the affected area, and only if the affected area continues to grow. Well, we already know that a larger area is affected. That's why I'm a little bit, that fire there. I mean, volcanic gases, fumaroles, volcanic heat. What caused that fire? So, and again, this railway tunnel is only one part of the gas story, right? Newly published study at Peschiarelli used an extremely fast laser instrument to measure hydrogen sulfide, the toxic gas that is responsible for this rotten egg smell around many of the fumaroles of the Campi Flegrei area. So that new sensor responds in approximately 1 second, so very, very fast. That allowed it to capture like these brief gas pulses that slower instruments can miss completely, we have to say. So at a position of about 10 meters, that's 33 feet, from the Peschiarelli plume, you can't get too close because it's so hot. The laser detected hydrogen sulfide spikes reaching 60 parts per million during one 60-minute period. The average concentration was approximately 11.5 parts per million. So the existing fixed monitoring stations had recorded maximum values of only about 3.6 parts per million during that comparison period. So there you see the difference. So again, let's take a deep breath. That does not automatically mean the old instruments were defective. They were located in different positions and they operated only for limited periods each hour. But the experiment has proven one thing. Short, concentrated pulses close to the fumarole can be dramatically higher than slower monitoring systems reveal. So at 120 meters then, approximately 400 feet from the source, the laser measurements fell below the instrument's detection threshold, so showing how quickly the gas can disperse outdoors, right? The danger was concentrated near the plume rather than it was spreading evenly across Pozzuoli. That's a good thing, right? So, but this creates an important distinction. The tunnel carbon dioxide and the Peschiarelli hydrogen sulfide are different gases, by the way, right? Measured at different locations. So neither measurement by itself proves that magma is about to like break through the surface and we have a volcanic eruption or a phreatic eruption or something. But they do prove that Campi Flegrei is releasing enormous quantities of gas through these fractures, through soils, through fumaroles, and through underground infrastructure like these tunnels, right? And that the exact concentration can depend heavily on where, when, and how quickly it is measured. It can be worse than they think. So now look at the rest of the volcano. INJV tells us, during June, Campi Flegrei produced almost 400 recorded earthquakes. Strongest has reached magnitude 3.6. That is significant for Campi Flegrei. 3 separate earthquake swarms were identified around the Aeronautical Academy Agnano area. This is where the fire was burning, Solfatara and Cigliano Monte Nuovo. So most of the located earthquakes remain shallow, concentrated within the upper 3 kilometers, that's less than 2 miles of the crust. So during the latest complete weekly report that we heard, almost 60 earthquakes were reported. 29 occurred during 2 swarms, one beneath Pozzuoli and another beneath the Solfatara. So strongest event in the last 7 days, 2.1. The land rise, the ground is also continuing to rise. Central part of the caldera is lifting at approximately 10 millimeters per month or 0.4 inches. So since January 2025, the Rione Terra monitoring station has risen approximately 30 centimeters. Ooh, that's more than 11 inches. So, and since the present unrest began, November 2005, the same area has risen approximately 1.66 meters or around 5 feet 5 inches. At the Solfatara, the Bocca Grande Fumarole is now averaging approximately 173 degrees Celsius, 343 degrees Fahrenheit. So is Campi Flegrei going to explode soon? The honest answer is the current evidence does not show that an eruption is imminent. We have alert level dark yellow. We have that confirmed again. This would be orange after the old scale, but then they invented yellow, dark yellow, light orange, dark orange, and then Shizzy's hitting the fizzy red, right? We have to see, is this all a coordinated escalation? They have not confirmed that. But what we do have confirmed, and there is no way around this, is that the caldera, Campi Flegrei, is forcing its gases into the city above it. It is, right? Fire, thankfully, is being extinguished right now, but the gas source is still active, so I'm keeping you active about that. But guys, check my Campi Flegrei list. The recent studies will blow your mind because they expect something very, very bad so soon, at accelerating, not linear speed. So check that video in the end screen if you're interested in that. Other than that, China is being hit by a bad typhoon Bavi. Horrendous pictures. It's here in the end screen. Stay safe, guys. I see you soon. Bye-bye.